Arthur Morgan dragged the unconscious woman through knee-deep snow, her torn wedding dress trailing crimson behind them. The blizzard howled around his weathered frame as he pressed forward toward the dim outline of his cabin. 5 years of solitude were ending with each labored step. Her dark skin stood stark against the white fabric. Blood had frozen in her hair. A crumpled advertisement clutched in her fist told him everything he needed to know about what had happened in town. The wind carried voices. Torches flickered in the distance like angry stars. They were still searching. Arthur's boots found the porch steps. His muscles screamed as he shouldered open the door. The cabin's warmth hit him like a wall. He laid her on his bed, the only bed in the single room that had been his entire world. Her breathing came shallow and quick. Bruises darkened her face. Someone had beaten her badly before leaving her to die in the wilderness. Arthur had seen enough violence to recognize the methodical nature of it. He stoked the fire until flames licked high. The light revealed more damage. Her dress was expensive, well made. This was no random victim. Someone had planned this. Arthur pulled his medical kit from beneath the floorboards. Army training never left a man. He cleaned her wounds with steady hands, the same hands that had tended soldiers in places whose names he tried to forget. The advertisement fell from her fingers. Arthur smoothed it against the table. Samuel Hayes seeking companionship. Marriage-minded, good Christian home. The usual lies men told when they wanted something they couldn't name. Outside, the voices grew fainter. The storm was driving them back. Arthur knew they would return when the weather cleared. They always did. He checked her pulse, strong but fast. Her body was fighting. That was good. Fighting meant she wanted to live. Arthur hadn't spoken to another human being in 3 months. Before that, 6 months. He bought supplies in town under cover of darkness, left payment, took what he needed. The arrangement suited everyone. Now this woman lay in his bed, breathing his air, bleeding on his blankets. Everything would change. He heated water over the fire. Steam rose between them. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Fever was coming. Arthur had seen it before. The body's way of burning out infection. Her hands were soft despite the cold. Educated hands. She could read and write, he guessed. The kind of woman who didn't belong in a place like Deadwood Gulch. Arthur found himself studying her face. Even bruised and swollen, she carried herself with dignity. Her spine stayed straight, even unconscious. This was a woman who had never bowed to anyone. The fire crackled. Wind rattled the windows. Arthur sat in his chair and watched her breathe. Tomorrow would bring decisions he wasn't ready to make. He thought about the wanted posters with his face. The lies printed beneath. His name. The reason he lived alone in a cabin that wasn't his, working a claim that barely paid for beans and coffee. The woman stirred. Her lips moved without sound. Arthur leaned closer. She was speaking to someone in her dreams. Her voice carried education, refinement. Whatever had brought her to this place, she hadn't come from poverty. Arthur added wood to the fire. The flames cast dancing shadows on the walls. He owned almost nothing. A few tools, some clothes, his father's rifle. The medical kit, books he had taught himself to read. The woman's breathing deepened. Sleep was taking her properly now. Her body was accepting the warmth, the safety. Arthur wondered if she would thank him or curse him when she woke. Outside, the storm raged on. Snow piled against the windows. The voices were gone now, driven back by weather that could kill a man in minutes. Arthur and the woman were alone with the wind and the fire. He pulled a blanket around his shoulders and settled into his chair. Sleep wouldn't come easy. It never did when his conscience was awake. The woman's hand moved across the blanket. Her fingers searched for something that wasn't there. Arthur wondered what she had lost besides her life's plan. Dawn was still hours away. The storm would blow itself out by then. The men would return with the sun. Arthur would have to decide what kind of man he wanted to be. The fire burned low. Arthur fed it more wood. The woman slept on, her breathing steady now. Whatever happened next, she would live to see it. That was enough for tonight. Morning light filtered through frosted windows when Nachan Washington opened her eyes. Arthur stood at the stove, his back rigid with tension. The smell of bacon filled the cabin. She tried to sit up. Pain shot through her ribs. Arthur didn't turn around. "You're safe," he said to the cast-iron pan. Mitchen's fingers found the bandages on her face. Clean work, professional. Her wedding dress hung by. The fire bloodstains scrubbed to pale brown shadows. Why? Arthur's shoulders shifted. The bacon sizzled. Storms passed. They'll be back. She studied the cabin. One room, one bed, one chair. A man who lived with ghosts could travel light. You could have left me. Could have. Arthur turned. His eyes were older than his face. Nachan recognized the look. She had seen it in mirrors. He set a plate beside her. His hands were steady despite everything. Soldier's hands. Eat. Nachan took a bite. The food was good. Simple but prepared. With care. You know what they'll do if they find us together. Arthur's jaw tightened. He walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. Snow stretched unbroken to the tree line. They think you're dead. What about you? Arthur let the curtain fall. He moved to a wooden crate and lifted the lid. Inside, yellowed papers lay folded like sleeping moths. He pulled one out and handed it to her, a wadded poster. Arthur's. Face stared back from beneath bold letters. $500. Dead or alive. They think I'm dead too. Nachan read the charges: desertion, murder, theft of military property. The words felt wrong against the man who had saved her life. Are you what they say I am? Arthur shook his head. No. The cabin fell quiet. Wind moved through the pines outside. Nachan folded the poster carefully. I can read the rest. Arthur's hands stilled. The rest? You have books. I see. You looking at them. The way a man looks at something he wants but can't have. Arthur's face flushed. A grown man embarrassed by his limitations. Nachan had seen it before in the schools where she had taught. I know some letters. I know all of them. They looked at each other across the small space. Two people carrying. Secrets too heavy for one person to bear. Arthur retrieved a battered book from the shelf. The binding was cracked, pages worn soft. He opened it to a marked page and set it between them. This word. Nachan leaned forward. Justice. Arthur nodded. He pointed to another. Redemption. His finger moved down the page. This one? Truth. Arthur closed the book. The words hung in the air between them. I'll teach you, Nachan said. If you want. Arthur's eyes searched her face. What do you want in return? To learn how to survive out here. You planning to stay? Nachan looked toward the window. Somewhere beyond the snow lay the town that had tried to kill her. The man who had promised to love her. The life that had crumbled in her hands. I don't have anywhere else to go. Arthur was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Winter's hard up here. Game is scarce. Water freezes. Wood runs out if you're not careful. I'm not afraid of hard work. It's more than work. It's choosing to live when everything wants you dead. Nachan met his eyes. I've been doing that my whole life. Arthur stood and walked to the fireplace. He stirred the coals with an iron poker. Sparks rose and died in the chimney's darkness. There's something else you should know. He reached behind a loose stone and pulled out more papers. These were different. Official army documents. Letters with military seals. I have information. About my former commanding officer. About what really happened. Nachan took the papers. The words swam before her eyes as she read. Court-martial proceedings. Witness testimonies. A cover-up that reached from frontier outposts to Washington offices. Colonel Dutch van der Linde. You know him? I know the name. He's a judge now. In Denver. Arthur's face went stone cold. Judge. Federal appointment. Very respected. The poker bent in Arthur's grip. Fire reflected in his eyes. He destroyed my life to save his career. Killed good men and blamed it on me. Michan set. The papers aside. She understood now why Arthur lived alone. Why he flinched at sudden sounds. Why he watched the tree line like a man expecting bullets. These documents could clear your name. If anyone would listen, someone might. Arthur looked at her with something approaching hope. It transformed his face, made him seem younger. Why would you help me? Because I know what it's like to be judged for something you didn't do. Outside, a branch cracked under the weight of snow. Both Arthur and Michan turned toward the sound. Arthur's hand moved toward his rifle. Nothing followed. The forest remained still. We should eat, Arthur said. Then start your first lesson, reading or survival. Arthur's mouth almost smiled. Both. They finished breakfast in comfortable silence. The cabin felt warmer somehow. Less like a hiding place. And more like a home. 2 weeks passed in careful rhythms. Arthur would disappear before dawn to check his traps. Michan would tend the fire and practice with the rifle he had left her. They spoke little, but their silences grew comfortable. The cabin warmed with shared purpose. Arthur's reading improved daily. Michan learned to skin rabbits without flinching. They moved around each other with the precision of dancers, learning the same steps. Arthur was organizing his meager possessions when Michan found the sealed letter. It had fallen behind the wooden crate, yellow with age. The military seal was unbroken. What's this? Arthur turned from the fireplace. His face went white as winter sky. Don't. But Michan had already seen the name written in careful script. Colonel Dutch van der Linde. The letter trembled in her hands. Arthur crossed the room in 3 strides. His fingers closed around the envelope but didn't take it. They stood frozen, both holding the same piece of paper. How long have you had this? 5 years. You never opened it. Arthur's grip tightened. Some truths are better left buried. Are they? Michan's voice was gentle but firm. Arthur's eyes held the look of a man standing at the edge of a cliff. He destroyed everything I was, everything I believed in. Then why keep his letter? Arthur had no answer. He released the envelope and stepped back. Michan turned it over in her hands. The seal was thick wax, pressed with an eagle. What? If it's an apology, men like Dutch don't apologize. What if it's a confession? Arthur's laugh was bitter as burnt coffee. He's a federal judge now, respected, powerful. What does he need to confess? Maybe that's exactly why he needs to confess. Michan held the letter toward the firelight. The paper glowed amber. Arthur watched her face, searching for something he couldn't name. You want me to read it? I want you to know the truth. Arthur sat heavily in his chair. The wood creaked under his weight. The truth is I was a fool. Believed in honor when honor was just another word for convenience. Michan broke the seal. The wax cracked cleanly. Inside, a single sheet of paper covered in Dutch's elaborate handwriting. She read silently. Arthur studied her face, watching for the moment when she would see him as the world saw him. A deserter, a murderer, a man without honor. Instead, Michan's eyes filled with something Arthur had never seen directed at him. Pity. Arthur, what does it say? He knew you were innocent. The words hit Arthur like a physical blow. He gripped the chair arms until his knuckles went white. He knew the massacre was wrong. He knew you tried to stop it. He needed someone to blame, and you were the only one brave enough to stand against him. Arthur's breathing grew shallow. That's not possible. He writes that he's been promoted to judge. That he's sorry for what he did to you but couldn't risk his career. That he hopes you understand. Understand? Arthur was on his feet now, pacing the small space. His hands shook with rage he had buried for 5 years. He destroyed my life. Because it was convenient. Because he needed a scapegoat and I was handy. There's more. Mitchen's voice was barely a whisper. Arthur stopped pacing. He kept evidence. Documents that prove your innocence. He writes that he's hidden them in case he ever needs to clear his conscience. Arthur leaned against the wall. The cabin felt too small to contain his fury. Where? His private safe, in his chambers in Denver. Denver. The word hung in the air between them. Denver meant civilization. Law enforcement. People who would recognize Arthur's face from Wanted. Posters. He also writes that he knows about the other activities. The missing women. The trafficking operation. Arthur's head snapped up. What trafficking operation? Mitchen folded the letter carefully. That's what I came to investigate. What? I'm not just a mail-order bride who got unlucky. I'm working with federal marshals to expose a trafficking ring. Women advertised as brides but sold into slavery. Arthur stared at her. The woman who had taught him to read complex sentences. Who skinned rabbits with steady hands. Who never flinched at the sound of gunfire. You're a federal agent. Investigator. I was supposed to marry Samuel Hayes and document his involvement. Instead, I found something bigger. The whole town. The whole territory. Sheriff Marlowe coordinates it. Dutch provides legal protection. They've been operating for 3 years. Arthur sank into his chair. And you have proof. I had proof. It was in my belongings when they beat me. Gone now. But Dutch's documents could expose everything. The trafficking ring. The military corruption. All of it. Arthur looked at the letter in Mitchen's hands. 5 years of exile. 5 years of believing himself a coward and a fool. 5 years of Dutch van der Linde. Sleeping peacefully in his judge's chambers. You want to go to Denver. I want to finish what I started. It's a trap. Has to be. Dutch doesn't confess to anything unless he has an angle. Maybe, but it's also our only chance. Arthur studied Mitchen's face. She had risked everything to expose the truth. Nearly died for it. Now she was asking him to risk everything too. They'll recognize me in Denver, not if we're careful. And if we're not careful, then we die trying to do what's right. Arthur stood and walked to the window. Snow was falling again, soft flakes that would cover their tracks. In the distance, smoke rose from the town that had tried to kill them both. Why didn't you tell me before? Would you have trusted me? Arthur considered this, a federal investigator. A woman with government connections. Everything he had learned to fear and avoid. No. And now? Arthur turned from the window. Mitchen sat straight in her chair, hands folded, waiting for his decision. Ready to accept whatever he chose. Now I think we're both fools. The best kind of fools. Arthur almost smiled. The kind that get people killed. The kind that save them. Outside, the wind picked up. Snow swirled against the glass. Arthur made his choice. When do we leave? They had been planning their departure for 3 days when Samuel Hayes appeared. At the cabin door. He stood in the morning light wearing his Sunday clothes, hat in hand. Behind him, 5 men on horseback waited in the tree line. Arthur's rifle was across the room. Too far, his hand moved toward the pistol at his hip. Please, Samuel said. I come in peace. Mitchen stepped forward. Her face showed no surprise, no fear, only cold calculation. You left me to die. I had no choice. The town would have killed us both. So you chose your life over mine. Samuel's face crumpled. I've been sick with guilt. Haven't slept since that night. I want to make it right. Arthur read the men behind Samuel. Their postures were wrong, too alert. Hands resting too casually near their weapons. Who are your friends? Men from town. They want to help. Help with what? Samuel's voice carried the desperate edge of a man trying to convince himself. Getting Michan back to safety. Away from you. Arthur's blood went cold. Away from me. They know you're the deserter. The one who killed all those people. They're afraid you'll hurt her. Michan's hand found Arthur's arm. A warning, stay calm. And you believe them? Samuel looked between Arthur and Michan. I don't know what to believe anymore. Then look at me, Michan said. Look at my face. Do I look like a woman being held against her will? Samuel's eyes searched her expression. Arthur saw the moment doubt crept in. Samuel's certainty wavered. They said you might be confused. That men like him know how to manipulate people. Men like him? Killers, criminals. Arthur felt the familiar weight of other people's judgments. The assumption that his guilt was written in his face. I never killed anyone who didn't deserve. The massacre. I tried to stop the massacre. That's why they want me dead. Samuel shook his head. The sheriff said you led it. Said you enjoyed it. The sheriff lies. One of the mounted men shifted in his saddle. Arthur caught the movement in his peripheral vision. The man's hand was no longer resting casually. It was gripping something. Samuel, Michan said. Why now? Why come for me now? Because it's right. Because I should have protected you before. Or because someone told you to come. Samuel's face went pale. They said you were in danger. From Arthur? From the winter, from isolation, from making bad choices. Arthur read the situation clearly now. The men weren't here to rescue anyone. They were here to clean up loose ends. How did you find us? Tracks. The storm covered most of them, but not all. And the sheriff? Does he know you're here? Samuel hesitated. He's concerned about both of you. I bet he is. Arthur's hand moved closer to his pistol. The movement was slow, casual. The men in the trees wouldn't see it yet. Samuel, Michan said. Look. At those men behind you. Really look at them. Samuel turned. Arthur saw his face change as he noticed what Arthur had seen. The predatory stillness. The way they watched the cabin instead of the conversation. They're not here to rescue me. Of course they are. But Samuel's voice had lost its conviction. He was beginning to understand. They're here to make sure neither of us leaves this mountain alive. Samuel's hat fell from his shaking hands. No, they promised. What did they promise? That if I brought them here, they'd let you go free. Find you safe passage out of the territory. And you believed them. Arthur almost felt sorry for the man. Samuel had wanted to believe in redemption so badly he'd walked into a trap. We need to leave, Arthur said quietly. Now, I can't. I gave my word. To men who planned to kill us all. Samuel looked back at the mounted men. One of them was riding closer. His hand was no longer hidden. Samuel, the man called. Bring her out now. Samuel's face went gray. I can't do this. You already did. Arthur stepped between Samuel and the door. Back entrance, through the kitchen. Michan was already moving. She grabbed the essential supplies they had packed. Arthur's documents, Dutch's letter. The rifle. What about Samuel? Arthur looked at the terrified man. Your choice. Come with us or stay and explain why we're gone. Samuel stared at the approaching riders. They'll kill me. Probably. But if I come with you, I'm a fugitive. You're already a fugitive. You just don't know it yet. The sound of horses grew closer. Arthur could hear leather creaking, spurs jingling. Samuel, Michan said, I forgive you. But I won't die for your guilt. Samuel's face crumpled completely. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Show me. Samuel nodded. His hands shook as he followed them toward the back of the cabin. Arthur opened the rear door slowly. The forest stretched empty before them, no riders, yet. They'll circle around once they realize we're gone. How long do we have? Minutes. They slipped into the trees. Samuel stumbled behind them, his Sunday clothes catching on branches. Arthur set a brutal pace. The mountain terrain was unforgiving, but it was their only advantage. Behind them, shouts erupted from the cabin. The riders had discovered the empty room. This way. Arthur led them up a steep slope. His boots found purchase on frozen ground. Michan followed with the steady rhythm of someone who had learned to trust her body. Samuel gasped behind them. "I can't keep up. Then you die." The words were harsh but true. Arthur had learned long ago that mountains didn't care about human weakness. Gunshots cracked through the air. The riders were firing blindly into the trees. Arthur pushed harder. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley. The cabin looked small below them. Smoke rose from the chimney Arthur had banked that morning. "There," Michan pointed. 5 riders spread out in a search pattern, moving fast, too fast for the terrain. "They'll lose horses pushing that hard." Good. Arthur studied the landscape. Multiple escape routes, but winter limited their options. They needed shelter, food, and they needed to stay ahead of men who knew the country. "Where do we go?" "Denver." "That's 200 miles. Then we better start moving." Samuel collapsed against a tree. "I can't do this." Arthur looked at the man who had tried to betray them. "You can. Or you can go back and face what you helped create." Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "I just wanted to do right." "Then do it." Now, they disappeared into the deep forest. Behind them, the riders spread out across the mountain. The hunt had begun. They found shelter in a cave carved by wind and water into the mountainside. Samuel had collapsed twice during the climb. Arthur half carried him the final 100 yards. The cave mouth opened like a wound in the rock. Inside, centuries of erosion had carved smooth chambers. Arthur built a small fire near the entrance. The smoke would dissipate before reaching open air. Samuel lay against the cave wall, breathing hard. His Sunday clothes were torn and dirty. The man who had tried to betray them now looked like a beggar. "I never meant for this to happen. Meaning doesn't matter now." Arthur spread his documents on the cave floor. Dutch's letter. Military records, witness statements. 5 years of evidence that could clear his name or get him killed. Michan pulled out her own papers. Notes written in careful script. Names. Dates. A network of corruption that stretched across 3 territories. "Look at this." She pointed to a list of names. Arthur recognized some of them. Town officials, military officers. Men who had built careers on other people's suffering. Your Colonel Dutch is at the center of it all. Arthur studied the connections. Lines drawn between names. Money flowing from the trafficking operation to military accounts. Legal protections bought and sold. He's been using his position to protect the ring. More than that, he's been expanding it. New territories. New victims. Samuel raised his head. How many women? Dozens. Maybe hundreds. The cave fell silent. Arthur fed more wood to the fire. The flames cast dancing shadows on the walls. "We have to stop this. We're 3 people running for our lives. We're 3 people who know the truth." Arthur looked at Michan. Her face was set with determination that reminded him of soldiers before a battle. She had made her choice. "The federal marshals, your contacts, should be in Denver by now. But they don't know about Dutch's involvement. And they won't believe us without proof." "We have proof." Arthur held up Dutch's letter. "This implicates him in the cover-up, not the trafficking. But it gives us credibility, makes them listen to the rest." Samuel struggled to sit up. "There's something else you should know." "Arthur." And Michan turned to him. "The sheriff. He's been sending telegrams to Denver, to Judge van der Linde." "What kind of telegrams?" "Warning him about you, about the investigation." Arthur's blood went cold. Dutch knows we're coming. He's been preparing, bringing in his own people. Military connections. Mitchen's face hardened. How do you know this? I work at the telegraph office, part-time. I've seen the messages. Arthur stood and walked to the cave entrance. Snow was falling again. Heavy flakes that would cover their tracks but also slow their progress. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Then we don't go. We have to go. Arthur turned back to Mitchen. Why? Why walk into certain death? Because if we don't, the women disappear forever. The trafficking continues. Dutch wins. And if we do, we die and Dutch still wins. Maybe, or maybe we expose enough truth to bring him down. Samuel pulled himself upright. There's another way. What? The federal marshals. They're not just in Denver. There's a detachment in Colorado Springs. Closer, less controlled by Dutch's influence. Arthur considered this. How do you know? The telegraph messages. Dutch has been trying to reach them too, but the communications keep failing. Failing? How? The lines are down, have been for a week. Storm damage. Mitchen's eyes lit up. If we can reach them first. We tell them everything. Show them the evidence. Let them decide. Arthur studied the map in his head. Colorado Springs was 50 miles closer than Denver. But the terrain was worse. Winter storms hit harder in the high country. It's still dangerous. Everything's dangerous now. Samuel stood on shaking legs. I know the trails. The old mining roads. We can avoid the main routes. You're not coming with us. Yes, I am. Arthur faced him. You tried to sell us out. I know, that's why I have to come. This isn't about redemption, Samuel. This is about survival. For me, they're the same thing. Mitchen touched Arthur's arm. He knows the country. We need that. He's a liability. So am I, so are you. We're all liabilities now. Arthur looked between them, a federal investigator. A failed groom, a disgraced soldier. None of them had any business taking on a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government. If we do this, we do it right. No mistakes. Number. Second chances. Agreed. And if one of us gets caught, the others keep going. Mitchen nodded. Samuel's face went pale, but he nodded too. What about weapons? Arthur checked his rifle. 1 rifle, 2 pistols, not much ammunition. I have a shotgun, Samuel said. Hidden near the old mine. Can you shoot it? I can try. Arthur almost smiled. Trying gets you killed. Then teach me not to try. Teach me to do. Arthur looked at Samuel Hayes, the man who had loved Mitchen enough to send for her, who had been too cowardly to defend her, who was now risking everything to make amends. All right. But we do this my way. Your way? Military precision. No heroics, no mercy for anyone who tries to stop us. Mitchen checked her own weapon. When do we leave? Arthur looked toward the cave entrance. The storm was worsening. Snow swirled in the wind. Dawn, storm will break by then. And if it doesn't? Then we go anyway. They settled in for the night. Arthur took first watch. Mitchen and Samuel huddled near the fire. The cave felt smaller with 3 people in it. Outside, the mountain held its breath. Somewhere in the darkness, riders were still hunting, but they were also preparing for something larger. Arthur cleaned his rifle methodically. Each motion was automatic. Practiced. He had done this before countless battles. This felt different, personal, like everything he had lost was waiting at the end of the trail. The fire burned low. Arthur fed it more wood. Tomorrow would bring decisions that couldn't be undone. He was ready. They reached Colorado Springs as the sun touched the western peaks. The town spread below them in the valley, smoke rising from chimneys into the cold air. Arthur counted the buildings, estimated the population, planned escape routes. There. Samuel pointed to a building with a flag. Federal courthouse. Arthur studied the structure. 2 stories. Multiple entrances. Good fields of fire from the upper windows. If Dutch had gotten here first, it would be a fortress. Too quiet, Michan nodded. Where is everyone? The streets were nearly empty. A few horses tied to posts. No crowds, no normal bustle of a working town. Military occupation, Arthur said. Blue uniforms moved between buildings. Soldiers. Too many soldiers for a peaceful town. Dutch's people? Has to be. They watched from the tree line. Arthur's mind catalogued threats, sentry positions, patrol routes. The soldiers moved. With purpose but not urgency. They were waiting for something. The federal marshals? Dead or captured. Samuel's face went pale. Then we're too late. Maybe not. Michan pointed to a building at the edge of town. Jail. If they're holding anyone, it would be there. Arthur studied the structure. Single story. Barred windows. 2 guards visible. Rescue mission? Information first. We need to know what we're walking into. They moved closer under cover of darkness. Arthur's training took over. Silent steps. Controlled breathing. The weight of his rifle familiar in his hands. The jail sat apart from the main buildings. Arthur could see into the cells through the barred windows. 3 men in federal uniforms. Beaten but alive. Marshals. Can we reach them? Arthur assessed the situation. 2 guards. Simple lock. But the noise would bring every soldier in town. Not without a distraction. What kind of distraction? Arthur's smile was cold. The kind that gets people's attention. He pulled out Dutch's letter. The evidence that could clear his name. The proof he had carried for 5 years. The courthouse. We walk in the front door. That's suicide. That's justice. Michan. Understood first. You're going to confront Dutch directly. In public, with witnesses, force him to respond. He'll have you killed. Probably. But not before everyone hears the truth. Samuel gripped his shotgun. What about the marshals? You and Michan free them while I keep Dutch busy. Arthur, no. Michan's voice carried something Arthur hadn't heard before. Fear. Not for herself, for him. It's the only way. There. Has to be another way. Arthur looked at her face in the moonlight. She was beautiful even now. Especially now. A woman who had risked everything for justice. Maybe, but we're out of time. Soldiers were moving through the streets. Changing. Guard. Arthur recognized the pattern. They were preparing for something big. Dawn, he said. They're planning something at dawn. What? Public execution. The marshals. Make an example. Michan's eyes widened. We have to move now, Arthur nodded. Samuel, you remember what I taught you. Aim center mass. Don't hesitate. Good. Michan, I'm ready. Arthur studied both their faces. 2 people who had started as strangers. Who had become something more. Family, maybe, or something beyond family. If this goes wrong, ... double quotes, it won't. If it does, you run. Both of you. Get to another territory. Start over. Arthur, promise me. Michan's eyes filled with tears she wouldn't shed. I promise. Arthur pulled out the documents. Everything they had gathered. Everything they had risked their lives to preserve. These go to the newspapers if I don't make it. You'll make it. Maybe. Arthur checked his weapons one final time. The rifle was loaded. The pistol ready. His hands were steady. Let's go. Finish this. They moved toward the town like ghosts. Arthur headed for the courthouse. Michan and Samuel circled toward the jail. The plan was simple. Desperate. Probably doomed. Arthur reached the courthouse steps as the first light touched the sky. He climbed slowly. Each step deliberate. He could feel eyes watching from windows. The front door was unlocked. Arthur pushed it open and stepped inside. Dutch van der Linde sat behind a massive desk. He looked older than Arthur remembered, grayer, but his eyes held the same cold calculation. "Hello, Arthur." "Dutch." "I wondered when you'd come." Arthur placed the documents on the desk. "It's over," Dutch smiled. "Is it?" "The trafficking, the cover-up, all of it. You always were naive." Outside, gunfire erupted. The jailbreak had begun. Dutch's smile widened. "Right on schedule." Arthur's blood went cold. "You knew. I've been watching you for months. Waiting for you to make your move." "Why?" "Because dead martyrs are more useful than live witnesses." Arthur's hand moved toward his gun. Dutch was faster. His pistol was already drawn. "I wouldn't." "Then shoot me." "Not yet. First, you're going to watch your friends die." Through the window, Arthur saw soldiers surrounding the jail. Michan and Samuel were trapped. "Let them go. You want me." "I want the story to end properly." The deserter and his accomplices killed while resisting arrest. Arthur's finger found his trigger. Some stories don't end the way you write them. This one does. The courthouse door burst open. Federal agents poured in. Real ones, not Dutch's people. "Judge van der Linde, you're under arrest." Dutch's face went white. "That's impossible. Telegraph lines were repaired last night. Your messages were intercepted, all of them." Arthur lowered his weapon. "The marshals?" "Safe. Your friends got them out." Through the window, Arthur saw Dutch's soldiers surrendering. The town was free. 6 months later, Arthur stood in front of the old mining camp. The buildings had been repaired. Children played in the yard. Michan taught school in the main hall. A letter arrived by messenger. Another woman in trouble. Another rescue needed. Arthur saddled his horse. Michan packed supplies. They rode out together toward the horizon. The work was never finished. But it was good work, honest work, work worth doing. And that is all to the story, for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.